Hello and welcome. Welcome to the Dr. Grant Show. Did you know that stress eating is not about food? It's often one of the biggest myths that I wind up completely helping people get over. Often the common assumption about stress eating is it's rooted in the food. How often have you heard someone say, "Oh, I was stress eating today because I was so worried about X, Y, and Z, or I had a presentation to make, or, stressed about, this upcoming discussion that I needed to have. And therefore I caved and ate the whole bag of chips, or I caved and I ate the whole bag of cookies, or, before I knew it, I looked down and I was elbow deep in that bag of chips or that pint of ice cream or something. And now I feel bloated. Well, this is something that often happens in my wellness practice. And the top thing that I usually wish to help my clients with is stopping the self-flagellation, because often they think it's about the food. And majority of the time, it is not. The food is the coping mechanism, but the reality is you could easily substitute this out with whatever your coping mechanism is of choice. Stress eating could easily be replaced with binge eating. It could be easily replaced with workaholism. You get my point. Now that we've busted the myth about stress eating, let's get to the root of what's causing it to take place. Often, the root of stress eating is because there is an emotional and a psychological factor that is at play here. And it goes deeper than the current event or set of events that might be making you feel as if you're being nudged forward or shoved forward. Very often, it's rooted in two things: something that happened to you in the past and something that you feel is looming in the future. And somewhere stuck in the middle is your body, because it loves you, its attempt to maintain and uphold homeostasis. That means, in the end, your brain and your body want to keep you happy. It wants to keep you calm. So, what does it do to that end? It sees the storm of stress coming, and it wants to deactivate that. It wants to neutralize that. Now, the key question is, what triggered the storm of stress? If you have a big presentation coming up, you can fall in one of two buckets. Bucket number one, often people feel like they aren't good enough to make the presentation. And this is rooted in something that happened in the past. Maybe at one point in time, years ago, when you attempted to make a presentation, it didn't go as planned. We still have that stuck in our subconscious somewhere, and your brain is ready to ring the alarm bells anytime this happens and you're presented with the same situation again. Or bucket number two, do we really feel comfortable and familiar with the subject matter that we're speaking on? Either bucket, I've had a lot of fun solving the puzzle for people in my wellness practice and also in my master classes and workshops. It's the most fun thing for me. Now, allow me to give you just a wee bit of insight if you fall into either one of those two buckets. The first bucket of not feeling good enough and something that happened in your past. Think back to those circumstances. Were you very young and that was your first experience and exposure to public speaking? How was your audience? Was your audience mature enough to handle the topic? Often these are things that we overlook. We wind up falling into something that's psychologically called the spotlight effect, where we think it's only happening to us in the whole world and its eyes are on us at that time when we're replaying and reliving this memory. And of course, this triggers the classic fight, fight, flight, fawn, or freeze syndrome. Maybe you agreed to do the public speaking thing because it would make someone happy, but inside you're quaking and shaking and trembling, wishing you hadn't said yes. Here's the key. Identify the event that happened in the first place that made you feel afraid of public speaking. Recognize as you look at yourself, suspended in time at that moment in time, the circumstances. Were you really young? Was the audience mature enough to handle what you were presenting? Was that your first time? Remember, most people that are considered experts in their field, they had about 10,000 hours worth of practice and work before they became known as the expert in their field. So if that was your first time out performing that task, imagine how much better you must be now that this is your 5th time, 10th time, 100th time. My point is, this is not your first time around. So statistically, the probability of you being more successful, you have to be more successful than your first time out. But often we're slingshotted back into that first time, and that's what causes us to start stress eating in anticipation of not feeling safe. This is so key. Once we begin to identify the emotional and the psychological factors that are at play for any of our stress eating episodes, the instances, the frequency, the intensity, and the duration of your stress eating episodes will begin to fall away. But we have to get to the root of it. We have to begin to understand what are the emotional and psychological factors that are at play. Now, let's swing back around to that other option that we talked about. A lack of familiarity with the topic. Well, that's an easy fix. And allow me to dissect this for you. If you fall into the bucket of having a lack of familiarity with the topic, remember, you don't have to know everything about that topic. All you need to know is what is your audience curious about? What does your audience want to know? How do you acquire that information? You can acquire it by giving a survey in advance. You can acquire it by even asking before your presentation, what are the key things that you have concerns about? And then structure your presentation around that. This way, you go into your, in this example, public speaking event more informed and having an opportunity to actually study up and become more familiar with the topic. Preparation is key. The more familiarity you have with the topic, the more comfortable your body feels, the less stress and the less cortisol that's emitted, and therefore we deactivate the fight, flight, fawn, or freeze complex that would be brewing. All right, so these important tips are tips that I often give to people in my wellness practice as well as during our workshops. I hope that these tips have helped you as well. Thanks so much for watching.